Good afternoon, everyone. And again, I hope you are all well and will continue to be well. I want to share with you a piece of spiritual interpretation attributed to the Khatam Sofer, Rabbi Moshe Sofer. It appears in his commentary to the book of Ruth, but it pertains to this week's Parsha directly. Rabbi Moshe Sofer is known to us correctly as being one of the giants of halacha, of one of the great poskim of the 19th century, really a pillar of halacha upon which many decisions and practices rest. And he was the rabbi in Pressburg, which today is Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. And he established the famous yeshiva in Pressburg. The yeshiva still exists here in Yerushalayim. And he has many descendants. An aristocratic royal dynasty of the Sofer Schreiber family. One of the attributes of Rabbi Moshe Sofer, which is a little less known probably, was that he was a great Kabbalist as well. He was a disciple of Rabbi Nosson Adler of Frankfurt am Main, who was one of the noted Kabbalists of his time, and who was unfortunately engaged in controversy that led to his expulsion from the Frankfurt community. And Rabbi Moshe Sofer, as his disciple, was one of those who accompanied him into exile. And Rabbi Moshe Sofer was greatly influenced by his teacher, by Rabbi Nosson Adler. And therefore, in many of his interpretations and commentaries, especially to Torah and Nevi'im, to the Torah itself and the words of the prophets, he takes a Kabbalistic flight in how he looks at it. So even though he's the rigid halachic expert, with great logic, intelligence, and research, there's a piece of him that is spiritual, otherworldly, supernatural. And that's the piece that, so to speak, I want to share with you today, to deal with, again, it appears in his commentary to the book of Ruth. There he raises a basic question. Why do we find in the world that there are certain non-Jews who are determined to convert and become part of the Jewish people, like Ruth? And why do we find that there are certain Jews who are determined not to remain Jewish, either to convert or to assimilate, to lose all contact with the Jewish people, to go away completely? So in its simplest form, we can answer the question by saying that that's freedom of choice, freedom of will, and that every person is endowed with this freedom to choose. And therefore, some non-Jews choose to join Judaism because of intellectual or emotional or personal reasons. And that's their choice. And certain Jews who also have freedom of choice decide that they don't want to be part of the Jewish people. Then they leave. Again, either through conversion or assimilation, or they just drop out. They're not here. So he raises this question, and it's in the book of Ruth, naturally, because she is the prototype of converts to Judaism. So he wants to know what impels her, what drives her. And again, since he is a Kabbalist, he is not willing to accept the rational, the logical answers that can be given. She's attracted to it. She's loyal to her mother-in-law, Naomi. She sees that Judaism is a religion that she can find herself and her place within it. She believes in the values and in the God of Israel. He is not satisfied with that at all, because that's, to a certain extent, if we think about it, it's very simplistic. I mean, why should a non-Jew become a Jew just because he knows a nice Jew? Or a Jew has been kind to him or her? And why should a Jew, God forbid, drop out because, he doesn't like his parents, he didn't like the teacher? It makes no sense. Why should we assign such petty causes to such important decisions? That's the question that he raises. So he traces it back to this week's Parsha. The Ribono Shel Olam is going to grant the Torah to the Jewish people. Chazal tell us, Kol mi she'ein lo busha, someone that has no sense of shame, it's a proof shelo omdu raglav shel avosov al har Sinai, that his ancestors had nothing to do with Sinai. By that, he deduces that the Talmud means that a great deal of the reaction to Mount Sinai, both in the Jewish and in the non-Jewish world, had to do with a sense of shame. Shame is what we feel because of the influence of others. The outside world induces shame within us. So the Medrash teaches us, Rashi quotes it, that the Ribono Shel Olam, so to speak, shopped the Torah around. He went to the children of Yishmael, he went to the children of Esau, he went to the non-Jewish world. The Talmud says, he offered it to them, said, you're also entitled, you're the children of Abraham, you're entitled also to take the Torah. So they said, Mike Sivbe, what does the Torah say? So the Ribono Shel Olam told them, not to murder, not to be immoral, not to steal. So they said, no, that's not for us because our way of life allows for these things. And so they said no. They said no. So they went to the Jewish people. The Jewish people said, Nasiv and Ishma, whatever, great. We take it. They didn't even ask Maksive. What does it say? In fact, they said, if the Lord is willing to give it to us, whatever he gives us, it's acceptable. We're glad to take it. So the Chassam Sofer says, the Lord offered it to the children of Yishmael and Esau. You're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So you're telling me that amongst all of that large number of people, there was nobody that wanted the Torah? Was unanimous? He said all of human experience, everything that we know about people, we must come to the conclusion that it was not unanimous, that there were those who wanted to accept the Torah. But since everybody, the majority, the overwhelming zeitgeist of this society, all said, no, we don't want the Torah. So they were ashamed to say that they do want the Torah. Because they don't want to expose themselves to be ridiculed by their neighbors. So the Torah was given only to the Jewish people. So he said again, amongst the Jewish people, you got 3 million people. Everybody said Nasiv and Ishma. Everybody wants the Torah. Again, our experience would teach us that that probably would be an overstatement. There must have been some people who said, what do we need the Torah for? It constricts our lives. Makes us burdensome. Makes us a special people. We don't want to be a special people. We want to be like everybody else. The only thing is, since the vast majority, together with Moshe, all say Nasiv and Ishmael, yeah, give it to us, we're going to take it. So they were ashamed to say, we don't want it. So they kept quiet too. So at Har Sinai, there were a lot of people who accepted the Torah out of shame. And there were a lot of people that refused to accept the Torah, but only out of shame. And therefore the Talmud says, if a person has no sense of shame, then he has no connection to Har Sinai. Because Har Sinai was built on this sense of embarrassment and shame that people have, that they don't want to buck the majority publicly. So the Chassam Sofer says, therefore, all the souls, now a part of the idea that Kabbalah teaches us that all the souls were present at Har Sinai. Even though physically I was not there, but my neshama was there. So all of the souls that did want the Torah amongst the Jewish people, but were simply ashamed and didn't say no, over the centuries, those souls are allowed to drop out. You do what you want. And in the non-Jewish world, all of the souls that wanted to accept the Torah but did not do so out of their sense of shame, are allowed slowly to be absorbed into the Jewish people in terms of conversion and gerut. The chidush, the novel point here of the Chasam Sofer is that souls also have the power of choice. In other words, before we were born even, our soul had a choice. That's a very powerful, powerful idea. That the power of choice pre-existed us, so to speak. It's within our soul. And the other lesson is that eventually whatever you want to be, that's what you're going to be. It may take long periods of time for the situation to arise, but eventually you're going to choose what you want to be based upon what you really wanted to be, even before you were born. So that's the interpretation of the Chasam Sofer to Maimed Har Sinai. It's a very interesting, almost radical interpretation, but it's certainly worth pondering and worth knowing, and therefore I take the liberty of having brought it to your attention. Stay well, my friends, and we'll see you again tomorrow, God willing. Kol Tuv Sela.